Broken Bow fans. Hey, they're going crazy out here. I've never seen anything like it.
They're still cheering for those Savages. Welcome. Another edition of the Southeast Beast. I'm Skip Copeland alongside Chris Chandler. This week, we recap an exciting football game. The Broken Bow Savages getting their second win in District 4A4 play. Absolute shocker. Both halves of football shocking, and for different reasons. The Savages coming away with a 48-24 win and moving to 2-0 in district play. And Chris, that was a crazy football game, to borrow Jules' words there.
Yeah, Skip, if you want to, the one thing you can say about Broken Bow Savage football, it's not boring. It has been the fifth game of the season, and the Savages are 4-1, and every one of those games, in its own unique way, has been a thriller. I mean, the most boring one, if you want to say boring or least exciting, was Durant. That still had some highlights and some great moments, but this one was completely unexpected. Savages against Fort Gibson. Fort Gibson Tigers came in 0-4, albeit with losses to Oologah, Berry Hill, Glenpool, and Poteau. But, Savages go in a pretty good favorite, even though they're on the road. But for the almost the entire first half, it was Tiger, burning bright, as it was the Tigers that took a commanding lead early.
They did, but that was Broken Bow contributing to that heavily, I would say. The thing you noticed about them right away was they were a lot better looking football team in terms of how big they were up front, how well they moved, the types of players they had at the skill positions. I thought they looked a lot better than an 0-4 team typically looks when you kick off a football game.
And they have one of the things is Cole Mahaney, their starting quarterback, went down in the second game along with Cade Waggle, their primary receiver. And so it takes a while to adjust to that, and looked like they got fairly well adjusted to it, though. Of course, Broken Bow gets the opening kickoff, takes the first possession, and then throws an interception just right at midfield. I believe is maybe at the 41 or somewhere between the 40 and 50. But they get an interception off a Brumley pass, and then they take it down on a very impressive drive, and for Fort Gibson, their first drive, in which they convert two separate fourth and shorts, but they convert two fourth downs. Broken Bow stiffens up and forces them to kick a field goal, so it's 3-0, and still off a turnover. And Broken Bow saying, "Okay, 3-0, we'll take it, and drive down and score." The ensuing kickoff, get a fair return, and then we run what looks like it's going to be a first down with Rogers coming out, but then he loses the handle on the football, and the Tigers recover deep in Savage territory.
Yeah, they turned that one over the 29-yard line. The Savages, in back-to-back possessions there, turned the football over, and Fort Gibson was able to convert this time into a touchdown. And already the Savages are down 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, and you can just kind of feel all the air in the balloon is gone. The Savages are really, wondering what's happening to them at this point. But they come back out on the next possession, and they look pretty good on offense on that possession. They actually moved down and got the ball into the end zone on the third possession of the game. But, of course, as is sometimes the case when you head north from McCurtain County, you find yourself having a touchdown called back on a holding penalty, and that happened to us. Then the Savages ultimately turned that one over on downs. And the Fort Gibson Tigers were able to put 6 more on the board, 7 technically with the extra point. So, before you know it, you turn around, it's 17-0, and the Savages really are needing to get some offense going at that point.
Yeah, it's the second quarter, and Broken Bow, after did have an impressive drive, but came up with 0 points on it. And so you're looking at 17-0, got to get something going. But then it's actually Fort Gibson that scores again. And, it's on
another Savage turnover.
Another turnover. It's a fumble return.
We snapped the punt. We snapped over the punter's head, and they scooped and scored. And that was right away. I mean, into the second period. I think we were just a few seconds into the second period when they got the touchdown that made them 17, and then it was the very next Broken Bow possession that they scoop and score, and they're up 24-0. We're on our heels. We've turned the ball over on 4 consecutive series: interception, fumble, turnover on downs, and then a snap over the punter's head, and it's a big hole at that point. 24 points is a lot to overcome in a high school football game.
It seemed like it was going to be an upset for, the Fort Gibson Tigers, and those two touchdowns that they had driven down and scored, on that run. And then when we snapped the punt over the head, those two touchdown plays by Fort Gibson were within 1 minute of each other, and also within the first minute of the second quarter. Yeah. And it's 24-0. Like, what are we gonna do? First of all, we got to get on the board, but we've got to do something about these turnovers and letting them actually, get drives against our defense. And to Bergamo's credit, we did just that.
We did. Big thank you to Kyron Whitfield for being the spark plug that we needed. He took a little short pass and really made some people have to find their laundry, because he froze some people in their tracks and took that one down inside the 5-yard line. The Savages were knocking on the door there finally in the second quarter. They were able to get that one in the end zone, a little run into the end zone. Missed the extra point, right? Actually, I think it was blocked.
It was blocked. It wasn't a miss. I mean, the kick came straight. It was good snap, good hold, but there was some penetration either from the side or in the center, and one of the Fort Gibson Tigers got a hand on it. So even after we had, managed to get on the board, they still had some momentum, because it's just 24-6 on that blocked extra point, and they have the ball back.
It is, but I don't know what kind of speech was given at halftime, but clearly it worked.
That's one way to say it. What I think happened is Bergamo went into the phone booth at halftime, ripped off the mild-mannered Clark Kent glasses, and donned the cape of the Super Savages for the second half.
Yeah, so after giving up 24 consecutive unanswered points by the Fort Gibson Tigers off of those turnovers, the Savage offense went to work, and from there on out, they looked spectacular.
Christian Brumley both running and distributing the ball to receivers. We drive straight down the field. He caps it off with a 2-yard TD pass, a 2-yard TD run. And then they go for two, because it's 24-12, and you're thinking, well, let's get it to 24-14 and possibly an extra point field goal and a touchdown will tie it, but it failed. So that was with 9:54, so just inside of 2 minutes expired in the third quarter. And then on the next possession, there's this monster pass. Jace Roberts just burns everybody for a 79-yard TD. Extra point's good. And so it's 24-19 with 3:42 to go. And at this point, after that stop and then the Jace Roberts TD, it's a 5-point game, but you can feel that the momentum has completely shifted and the Savages are looking dominant.
Yeah, I mean, the defense did not play poorly all night long, honestly. The turnovers really put them in a bad situation when we controlled field position. Then from that point on, the defense continued to shut down the run, continued to get pressure where it needed to happen, and the Savages were getting the football back. And when they were getting it back, they were doing something with it. Each of those possessions really have their own type of highlight about them. That 45-yard drive that you talked about that Brumley capped off with that little touchdown run, and then that great pass to Roberts, who turned on the Jets, didn't he?
Man, Jace Roberts, look, I know he runs track, and I think he's maybe a middle distance guy or maybe a quarter guy, but he really looked like a sprinter on that. I mean, he caught the ball and slowed down a little. He wasn't at top speed, but then when the pursuit started to take a step to catch up with him, he just accelerated and outran everyone. I mean, that's an 80-yard play almost.
Yeah, so I had him at 81. You have him at 79. So either way, I thought we were at the 19. Maybe we were at the 21. But
let's call it 80.
Okay. One of the longest pass plays in Savage history. I mean, it's we don't have that many of them that go that long or longer.
It's 12 yards off the record. Two consecutive 92-yarders back in I think it was 2018 and 2019. So yeah.
So the Savages then, they, from that point forward, well, actually, they already had momentum fully on their side, but from that point forward, they were never stopped again. It was every possession it resulted in a touchdown, and boy, really just some powerful running, some really nice option reads, and some really nice targets on some timing routes. Brumley, as you said, distributing the ball well. He got a couple other people. He got Leland Billy into the end zone on a 15-yard pass. That was exciting to watch. And Camden Rogers really doing the work, carrying the mail. Got him a couple of touchdowns as well, one on a 20-yard run and one on a 1-yard run. The Savages going from down 24-0 to ultimately winning the football game 48-24, and they just completely dominated that second half. So if you take the first half of football against Medill and the second half of football against Fort Gibson and put those two together, I don't know who can beat us.
Yeah, I don't either, but the Savages may well have to do that in a couple of weeks because the Poto Pirates are coming to town. But first, you take this a week at a time, and so we're going to be looking ahead to this week's game on Thursday at Memorial Stadium, and it's going to be against the Salisaw Black Diamonds.
Yeah, it's unfortunately you don't get to pick and choose which quarters you want to count and which ones you don't. So we do still have to talk about those two quarters, those two halves I'm talking about back to back, the second half of the Medill game and the first half of the Fort Gibson game. I'm not sure who we can beat if we play like that. So you've kind of got that to worry about, and you've got to work on those things. But here's the thing about it. We tackled better. We pursued better. We did almost everything better. So it was a good week of practice. The coaches knew what they wanted out of the team and obviously, had them ready to play from that respect. But we turned the ball over. I mean, we just kept giving them the football and they kept taking advantage of it. When they would get the ball, they'd turn it into points.
The three of those scoring drives by Fort Gibson were off of turnovers as in interceptions and fumbles. And one, the ball snapped over the punter's head on special teams. And then another one was when we actually went for it on fourth and couldn't convert. And so it was a turnover on downs.
Yeah, and here a couple of things I noticed, and the things that we pay attention to. Obviously, early in the year, one of the things we talked about was our ability to shoot ourselves in the foot, to get behind the chains, have more than 10 yards to go for first down with fewer than 4 downs to work with, and we did that over and over again early in the year. But we have worked our way through those problems. We really have, and we've stayed, in a manageable down and distance. We've done a good job, really, of keeping ourselves in a place where we can have success. But the turnover bug, when it bites, sometimes it does that to you. Sometimes it just happens in that way. And fortunately for the Savages, they had a better football team ultimately than Fort Gibson and were able to come back from a 24-point deficit. But I don't think you want to spot the Pirates or the Hornets or the Cougars. I don't think you want to give up 24 and have to try to come back on one of those defenses.
You definitely don't. But as you pointed out, we were really a lot better on first down. And a lot of that may be attributable to Alan Kite, number 55. He's in. This was his first game as a Savage at center. Suited out and really made a positive impact on that offense. I mean, got the timing down, started blowing guys off the ball. So, just great job. It's nice to have Kite in there at center, and that transition from center to quarterback makes a big difference too. And so the offense looked really sharp the second half. And I think that possibly, I know they had, weeks of practice and that they work on these things all week, but maybe in a game situation, it's a little bit different. It's a different feel. And so some of that first half jitters or lack of performance could have been just getting used to the timing between Kite and Brumley. But man, once it got rolling, the entire offense was effective the second half. And the biggest story is the awakening of the Savages at halftime. We went from the least to the beast, and Fort Gibson was as stunned in the second half as Broken Bow was in the first.
I'm not sure what the situation is with the team in terms of their official statistics anymore. I know they used to publish those. I haven't seen any official statistics this year, but I would say that the Savages, especially Christian Brumley, really had a great statistical game. Brumley accounted for 5 touchdowns, I think 3 on the ground, 2 through the air. And then Cam Rogers had a couple of touchdown runs as well. The Savages with a lot of yards through the air and a really solid running game as well through this one. Statistically, that game probably looks pretty good on paper.
Not just on paper, it looked good on video as well and in person. And the thing is, stats don't always tell the full story, but they tell a lot. Yards per carry, things like that go in to the mix. And this wasn't Broken Bow padding their stats, quote unquote, by after the game was out of hand, leaving the first team in and handle. I mean, we were down 24-0. Okay, this is the second game in a row that Broken Bow has come back to win after trailing. That does something to you. That does something and this time by a much bigger margin, but with a lot more time to do it. So we've come back from a 24-point deficit and just dominated. And then we've also come back in, less than a minute against Medill when things look really down towards the end of the game. And both of those are things you can look back on if we get in those situations in games toward the end of the season. Going forward, we can say, guys, look, we can do this. You remember what we did against Medill. You remember what we did up there against Fort Gibson. And so that really helps the Savages in their confidence and their ability to perform better and come back against odds. Also, Kyron Whitfield continues to improve physically. He played defense as well as receiver, and it made a difference in the game.
It definitely changes the game with Whitfield in there, both offensively and defensively. When Whitfield's on the field offensively, the other receivers, 12, Roberts and Martin, number 6, are better receivers when number 3 is split. They just are, because now there's a lot more pressure on the defense to have to pay attention. Not saying that the guys that replaced Whitfield are not good players. It's just that Kyron Whitfield is such a good player. He takes the focus away, makes them have to pay attention to him, and gives everybody else a better opportunity.
And we also added another wrinkle for defensive coordinators to look at. I mean, we have thrown passes to Leland Billy before, but this is something. If I'm a DC at another school and I'm watching this video, I'm going, hey, that big number 88, he's a big target. He can move. He's got, pretty good hands. And look at him catch the ball. They can throw it to him. So you have to worry about him. You have to worry about Whitfield. You have to worry about Martin. You have to worry about Camden Rogers coming out of the backfield. You've got to worry about 5 or 6 different targets that Brumley can throw it to, and then you have to worry about number 2, that quarterback, running. And that gives Broken Bow a lot of options. You can't just concentrate on stopping one guy, and that makes the offense very dangerous and very effective.
It does. And, this all starts up front. We've talked about it all season long of how well we're playing in the trenches on both sides of the football. And those boys up front did a good job again this week. And to your point, the new center, and I'm sorry for not knowing his name off the top of my head, but he played a very, very good football game.
It's Alan Kite, and the way to remember Kite is he tends to send opponent's defensive linemen flying.
Okay.
So also Reese Hoover got in there as well. Hoover played a good game. Zach O'Donnell, Jake Jordan in there. So I didn't see Bahena as much, and I don't know if he was injured or just giving him a rest or what they were doing. And also Leland Billy comes in not only as tight end, but in that H-back position, as does Aiden Coley, and they are both very effective blockers as well as, out in Billy, especially as a receiver. But, you stick the guy in the H-back, you run a lead behind him, and they did that a couple of times, both with Billy and with Coley, where they let him lead the play off tackle and then just had Camden Rogers follow him through the hole, and it turned into a couple of big runs for Rogers. Well,
you alluded to some of the other intangibles that come from these kind of come from behind wins, besides the cardiac kid aspect of it, of, hey, giving you the confidence that you can win. There's a cohesiveness that comes from, feeling good about what you've accomplished together as a team, coming from behind like that, and really putting that performance and feeling that momentum shift into your favor and keeping it rolling, being able to have that excitement. I thought there was more excitement on the sideline and that I've seen most of the year, honestly. The younger guys that aren't necessarily on the field during the game were participating in the game more than what I'd seen earlier in the year. And I thought all of those were very positive things, positive intangibles for the Savages moving forward.
It does. It gives you just as you put it, cohesiveness, just that feeling that we are a team. And, we talked about, having extra receiver. Also, Alex Lindley was in there for a great catch. Carl Cooks can make, look at all these weapons Broken Bow has. And then the defense stepped up and played an extraordinary second half, and that's promising going forward, putting pressure on the quarterback and also being able to defend against the run, because we're going to face some teams that can run and throw the ball, some respectively. Some are good running teams, some are good passing teams, but not the other, and some are just good all around. Although for this week's opponent, not necessarily so.
Well, that's true. That's true. We'll preview that game in just a moment. Let's finish this one up just a second here. Let's button this up. It was a 48-24 final. The Savages moved to 2-0 in district play, 4-1 overall for the year, and move on forward now, still at the top of the district. We could talk about tiebreakers later, but right now they're unbeaten, along with two other teams that are unbeaten. And the reason is that we lost one this week is because two of the unbeatens were playing each other. That was Hilldale and Ada. The Cougars on the road to Muskogee to play the Hilldale Hornets, and the final in that game was a back and forth game, played really well, I thought, by both teams. 24-16 the final. Hilldale comes away with the win to remain 2-0 in district play. The Cougars fall to 1-1 in district. Another exciting game between unbeaten, or at least in the district schedule, unbeaten Podo playing the Medill Wildcats, the team that we saw the week before that gave us so much trouble. They gave the Pirates trouble as well. Final score 17-14. The Pirates defeat the Wildcats in Medill by that field goal. And that was a very, very tight football game. The other one on the schedule, Podo moves to 2-0, Medill to 0-2, by the way. Stillwell and Sallisaw played up in Stillwell. The Stillwell Indians come away with a 30-20 win over the Black Diamonds. They go 1-1 in district play. The Black Diamonds fall to 0-2 in district play, and that's the upcoming game that you were alluding to, Chris. The Black Diamonds on their way to Broken Bow for a Thursday night kickoff this week. We'll see Sallisaw again, a team that we know pretty well.
And so, yeah, the Black Diamonds, one of the teams we're very familiar with. I played them as a district opponent. You played them when you were in high school, and folks, not to give away our age, but that was not 10 years ago.
No, we had the misfortune of playing them in the first round up in Sallisaw in the year they won their first state championship. So they went on after defeating us. I think the final in our game was 15-13. We had a chance to tie the game and could not on a 2-point conversion, and they wound up winning the game 15-13 and went on to win the state championship that year. So I don't know if that was the first time that the two teams ever played, Sallisaw and Broken Bow. I don't know if we'd played before that or not, but we've played a lot since then. They've been district opponents with us since sometime in the early 80s.
Since specifically, I think since 82. Because I know that they were district opponents in 82.
I don't ever remember a time since then that when we were in the same class that we weren't in the same district. Podo, Sallisaw, Broken Bow, that's kind of a consistent threesome there in that what we call now 4A4.
Yeah, it has been. And again, they tend to fluctuate as to, they have some really good, tough teams at Sallisaw, athletes, guys that are hard to tackle, guys that are hard to keep from tackling you, but this year, personnel-wise, not as good. You mentioned they are 0-5. They are winless, but they do have some good players. And interestingly enough, a new coach, but the new coach is a guy that Mark Hudson, you may remember, and they may recognize that name if you're an Oklahoma University fan. He was on the national championship team in 1985, one of the few people to actually start as a true freshman for OU in the Barry Switzer era, and coached in college and in the NFL for a long time. And what's this guy doing at Sallisaw? And it's I think his son-in-law is a coach there. His daughter teaches in the school district. Understand, he's originally from Fort Smith, played high school at Fort Smith North Side, and so just kind of close back to home. So you may see, and again, a first-year coach, but certainly a incredibly experienced one, and has some athletes to work with. And you may see them, congealing and getting better as the season goes on because they're adjusting to a new system. Well,
he's got his work cut out for them. We watched them a couple of games, the preseason games we call them, but Stigler and Muldrow, we watched some film on them, and they've got a few players that shine when you look at their film, but overall, you would still look at the Savages and say, position for position, we should feel confident going into this football game.
Yeah, a couple of guys. The quarterback and a couple of receivers are good, although one of them is small, but their line, both offensive and defensive, are, and I think this is the first time we've said that Broken Bow is bigger than a line, or as big as Fort Gibson. Broken Bow dwarfs these guys.
Yeah, there's no question our offensive line is bigger than their defensive front. There's no doubt about that.
And the thing is they don't look as fast laterally. And so, you think, well, their little guys are probably really fast laterally. Now, they have a couple of players that can burn it, but they do not look fast on the corners. It looks like we can move the ball against them, especially if we play the way we played the second half last week, if we can move the ball against anybody. But defensively, they're just a sieve. They give up 5 TD passes versus Ada, and 3 of them were for 50-plus yards.
Yeah, you think about Sallisaw traditionally, they're always strong at the back and linebacker type, fullback / linebacker type positions. They've always seemed to have a surplus of those 6 foot, 200-pound football players. And I just don't see that many guys on the field for them this year that meet that description. They really do seem like they've kind of hit a bit of a drought here in terms of athletic football players for the Black Diamonds.
Yeah, they've got a kid named Brock Oft, and I think Brock is how you pronounce it. He's a wide receiver and the punter, and he caught a 58-yarder against Tahlequah. He's one of those big kids that looks big and athletic and, can move. There's a guy named Cooper Jackson. He's number 2. He's a receiver, but he's and has good hands, but he does not look like he has the speed that we're accustomed to seeing there. And then the quarterback, it's number 4. It's Parker Jackson. He's 6 foot, or he's listed at 6 foot 175. He's very slim of build, though, so he may not quite be 6 foot. And then there's Salem Kilpatrick. Now, this guy is dangerous. He's a wide receiver. He's a kick and punt returner. And we saw some video of him taking one to the house against Muldrow, and the kid can move.
Well, it all's going to happen on Thursday night this week as the Savages try to keep this district unbeaten streak going. And, in fact, have a 4-game winning streak going as well. They'd like to keep that one alive. Savages 2-0 in district play. The Black Diamonds 0-2. I show a 7 o'clock kickoff on this one. That's Thursday night in Memorial Stadium. The Savages and the Black Diamonds. The other games in 4A4 this weekend, the 2 other unbeatens. One of them will not be at the end of the weekend. Hilldale travels to Poto. Both 2-0 teams will play one another this weekend. So we'll have only one of those 2 obviously remaining unbeaten after the weekend ends. Madill is at Ada. The Wildcats still trying to get that first district win. Played 2 very good competitive football games. Came out on the short end of both of them. They're 0-2. The Cougars are 1-1. And then Fort Gibson will travel to Stillwell to take on the Indians. The Stillwell Indians with a big victory over Sallisaw last weekend. So hopefully the Savages will get a chance to do the same with the Black Diamonds.
Yeah, and we hope to, see you either out there or listen to the live stream or just catch us for the recap after this week's Thursday night game. But it's going to be the Savages looking to position themselves. As you mentioned, Poto, Hilldale playing each other, so one of them's going down. Savages can nicely position themselves as at the top of the heap or close to it, at least tied for it in district play after Thursday.
As always, we thank you for joining us here on the Southeast Beast. We'll be back with another recap and preview next week. Until then, I'm Skip Copeland.
And I'm Chris Chandler. And remember, once a Savage,
always a Savage.